Dan, good news. You've got a positive podcast to edit this week. Enjoy it. Right, let's go. Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me tonight is Matt Barocco. How are you, Matt?
Evening, in a good mood for once.
Brilliant stuff. Unfortunately, Steve can't be with us tonight. Rumour has it that he couldn't stand the idea of a positive Jackcast podcast. It was immoral, according to him. So he's not going to be joining us. Just for clarification, that's not the reason he can't make it tonight. But it is ironic, really, they can't be here on the one podcast where we've got pretty much nothing but positives to discuss. So without further ado, Matt, let's dive into it. The Swans, probably until last night, the worst away team in the division on current form, went away to West Bromwich Albion and, lo and behold, got a very rare away win.
Yeah, it was definitely needed. I mean, the performance, we were talking to a few of my mates before the game kicked off, and I thought, at this stage, I'll accept defeats, looking to build, but we need to have something to build upon, and it needs a performance. I think what we'd seen, as we discussed before we started recording it, or we had the Hull, and we had Sheffield United, Stoke in between. Yeah, absolutely. 3 horrendous games, and they almost got worse every time each game came. So it just felt like, how bad can this go? So we needed a reaction. I think Russell Martin was quite clear and honest about that in his assessment post Sheffield United. And to be fair, the players gave it. I thought last night showed a lot more intent and composure to not shoot ourselves in the foot quite often as we've been doing in recent weeks, and allow ourselves something to play for as the game reached the latter stages. And from the post-match analysis, it sounds very much like that was the tactic, and we played it off to perfection.
Yeah, Joe, I went up there on Monday night, rare away game for me. And one of the things that struck me was before kickoff, before the teams had even come out the tunnel or anything, Russell Martin walked all the way over to the away end, and kind of got the fans kind of pumped up, clapped us, and I don't know, it was something quite unusual. You don't see managers doing that very often. I don't know if Martin's done that before. Like I said, I don't go to most away games, but if it felt, it felt kind of, oh, what's going on here? And it just felt like he wanted to make sure that everybody was in the right mood and everybody was with the right attitude for this kind of game. Because looking at West Brom's form going into the game, we all knew that no matter how badly Swansea had played, this was definitely a winnable game. I mean, West Bromwich Albion one win in their previous 11 before this game. I think they'd failed to score in all but 8 of those games. They'd still only lost one home game all season, it should be said. They've had a lot of 0-0 draws at home. But, they were clearly a team in a really bad way. Steve Bruce hadn't won a game yet, so they were there for the taking. But I think, like you said, the way the Swans came out in that first half, it was a very cautious approach. We saw Wolf and Christie switch wings to begin with, which I think at the beginning everybody was really quite confused about and not really understanding what was the thinking behind that. But more I thought about it during the game, it made sense because they were playing up against Diangana and Robinson, 2 wingers / forwards who really enjoy cutting in. They're not really traditional wingers. They'll cut in at every single opportunity. So it made sense then to have sort of Christie as a right footer up against Diangana and Wolf as a left footer up against Robinson. And for the most part, I think it worked. So, but I think the bottom line, Matt, with the first half was it wasn't a classic by any means. West Brom had the only, clear-cut chance of the entire half when Robinson hit the post. We got a bit lucky with that one. But other than that, the Swans managed to keep them quiet. We kept the ball pretty comfortably, but when we got into the kind of the West Brom half, I just felt there was a lot of hesitancy there. We were very, very careful. And like you said, I think after recent away games, there was just this feeling that we want to be extra cautious. We don't want to mess things up. We don't want to take too many risks. Let's just keep it at 0-0. Let's just keep things safe and sensible and not put ourselves in a position where we've got an uphill battle, because we know, Matt, from experience this season, when the Swans fall behind in a game, odds are it's going to turn into 2, 3, 4 goals very, very quickly, as we saw against Stoke and against Sheffield United. So, in my opinion, even though that first half definitely won't win any beauty contest, it wasn't particularly exciting. Neutrals watching on Sky would have probably hated it. I think it was probably the right tactic from Russell Martin.
Yeah, I mean, this as you rightly mentioned there. I mean, look at the last 3 games. I've already talked about Hull, Stoke, and Sheffield United. Hull, we were out of the game in 20 minutes. Stoke, we should have been out of the game in 20 minutes for their poor finishing. And Sheffield United, we were out of the game in 20 minutes. So, first and foremost, we can look and say, right, if we get an early goal here against West Brom, their fans will turn. Which may have been the case, but more importantly, what we don't want to do is do what we've done in the last 3 away games and give the opposition something to cling on to and something to get excited about and for their fans to rally behind. So the important thing last night was to make sure we don't give them anything to sniff at and to grab at. And like you say, the Callum Robinson effort that came off the post was the standout moment in that first half. But to watch how the game developed and how we didn't push didn't commit anything. We played some lovely football in patches in that first half, not in any dangerous areas, but it was still nice to see us try things going forward, even if we weren't creating a great deal in the final third. But it was some lovely one-touch pass. And I thought, and I know this may be controversial because some people have slated him, but I actually thought Hannes Wolf had a great game. And I thought some people didn't really rate him at all in last week's performance. I don't get it. What did you think? I thought he did a great game.
I thought that was possibly his best game for the Swans. Like, I thought he played really well. I thought he was defensively solid, worked hard as he always does. But there was some really good play between himself and Patterson. Yes. He was always giving us an option on the left. Second half especially, obviously he really grew into the game second half, and
pivotal in the opener as well.
Yeah, I mean,
he talked about with his tracking back there.
Exactly. I mean, he's the one that wins the ball back in his own half and gives it. And Cham, who we'll discuss in a bit, he was the main event in that goal really. But then Wolf, picked out the cross for. Which caused the chaos in the West Brom box for the second as well. Yeah. I thought Wolf was really good. I remember leaving the stadium last night, looking at my phone and seeing quite a few people kind of saying that they were losing patience with Wolf and that they weren't, that they didn't get what he was trying to do, etc. I was like, really? Have we watched the same game? I don't know. Sometimes a game can look differently in the stadium to what it does at home, but I thought he was, really promising and was a key player in the win. But there we go. That's just me. I mean, I think at halftime, Matt, there were both teams it looked to me like two teams in that first half who weren't backing each other, but weren't backing themselves. West Brom, you could see why they were in such a mess. Their passing was really shaky. They had a few chances, but they too had moments where they got into dangerous positions and then kind of looked backwards, didn't back themselves to take that extra risk. And when they did put the cross into the box, it was usually really poor quality. And then the Swans, like we said, were playing it quite safe and not taking too many risks. So it was a question really of which side was going to come out in the second half and really kind of set the tempo and say, right, we're going to go for it. And there was no doubt it was the Swans who did that straight away, basically, in that second half. They came out and they said, right, we're going to play on the front foot and we're going to be a bit more adventurous. And not too far into the second half, you had Joel Piroux hitting the post from a very tight angle. And the longer the half went on, the more pressure the Swans built, the more we kind of pinged West Brom back, the more frustrated the home fans went. And the more you kind of felt, come on, there is something in this game for us if we can just get that final ball right.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there was I could say that the first half didn't produce much that you would want to make a highlight reel about. And Sky replayed the same two things about 10 times. Desperate to find any content for that halftime break, but there was nothing.
Unless of course you were Wyndham Evans. I don't know if you've seen the highlights on this.
I've seen the Matt Grimes F that went wide. Celebrated for 5 seconds, yeah.
Even when Matt Grimes was kind of looking away and kind of shaking his head,
yeah,
Wyndham still said, "It's a goal."
Yeah, I think we were about 15 minutes into the second half by the time. No, I'm only joking. No, to be fair, we Wyndham Evans is he's a very excitable commentator. We love the fact that he's so passionate, isn't he, about the Swans. That was quite a funny moment last night. I didn't see it live. I was watching the Sky Sports coverage, but when I did see it back in the highlights, I did laugh. But I mean, Sky could only pick up the Cyrus Christie header at the back post, which the keeper beat away quite comfortably. And the reality of the first half was that had that second half gone the other way, the first half would have looked worse than it does now. And the fact that the game has come the way it's gone has looked like, and by all accounts, not discrediting it, but in a stretch, because it has played out like a masterclass. Russell Martin said after the game, look, we've done our research, we've done our homework on these. We know they concede loads after the hour mark. They cannot keep a clean sheet at that stage. So we need to just make sure that we're in that game and play for that drab opening hour if you need to, just to keep it boring, keep it quiet. Look, West Brom did hit the woodwork twice, so it could have gone another way, and they did have Andy Carroll on the pitch, which definitely should have gone another way.
It's a miracle he didn't score.
Yeah, unbelievable. I'm happy to just jinx myself, because if there's one thing I can do is put opposition players off scoring by putting a bet on them doing so, because I am awful at betting. So, I managed to do that. I'm £10 lighter as a result of it, but Swans got the benefit of it.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
Do you remember a couple of years ago when I was predicting defeats week in, week out, and we kept getting the wins? I feel like I've got some sort of opposite curse with the Swans, where I just whatever I say, the opposite happens. But yeah, it was really one of those things that had the second half effort just sneaked inside the post, or the first half header not veer away at the last second. It could have been a different story, because as we know, Swans going behind is not a good news story anywhere normally, but away from home in particular. So yes, it was something that we had to make sure that we didn't give them too much. And to be fair, we didn't. There was those fleeting moments aside. West Brom, they looked so poor, and very much a team low on confidence, low on ideas. Something that we can perhaps resonate with in recent weeks. But yeah, absolutely. We had to come out in the second half and really take the bull by the horns. And we were much more positive. And taken in its full context, the fact that the game went the way it did looks great from Russell Martin, because it's almost like this is exactly how I hoped it would play out. Had the second half effort from Karen Robinson found the back of the net rather than hit the post, then the first half may have looked like, well, that was a shocking game all in all. But yes, it was great the way it panned out in the end. And we'll probably go on to talk about the goals specifically now. But in terms of the gameplay and the way it developed, Swans, you could see them growing. And the people were talking on social media saying, West Brom are absolutely there for the taking here. If we just give a little bit more, and you could see it, the players feeling the confidence. The link-up play was getting more and more fluid and more adventurous. I was noticing us try to play the balls early into the channels. One of my biggest criticisms, Guto, as you well know, is us taking the second, third, fourth touch. Yep. And it slows the play down. It allows the opposition to regroup, and then the opening that was on isn't on anymore. And that was something that we kind of, particularly in the second half, stepped away from. All of a sudden, the ball was moved a lot quicker, and we were going straight into the feet of the attacking player, and it was giving us something to build off. And we also had the big opportunity before the opening goal, in which Michael Obafemi got in between the two centre halves and directed his header over the bar. Even then, you thought, was that it? Was that the chance? thankfully, a man who absolutely, definitely owed us a performance came on and gave us one.
That's the thing. And Cham, let's get down to it. Earlier on the season, I think we were all raving about him. He was having some fantastic games. Couldn't play 90 minutes in any of them. Obviously, he'd get tired after about an hour. But he had a number of games where he thought, wow, this guy's a class act. The kind of midfielder that we really needed in this system to make it work. Having some standout performances. But over the last few months, there's no doubt those performances have pretty much disappeared. He's gradually just lost more and more of everything that makes him an effective player, really. Not as good on the ball, not as physically imposing, not as energetic, and just nowhere near as effective. And then he came off the bench last night, and within, what was it, like a minute or two? I mean, he picks up that ball and just runs down the wing. The boy Castro, what he's doing diving in that position, that's the folly of youth there. That was a really stupid decision, which freed up that wing for Ncham. But then he gets into the box, head up, and picks out a really nice ball back to the path of Piru, who just smashes it, basically. It's not in the corner, it's straight to the keeper, it just goes through the keeper. But for me, that goal, even though Piru's the man with the name on the score sheet, that one is pretty much entirely down to Ncham. And that was the Ncham of old, the Ncham that we saw, up until November, really. That was him at his best. And it was just a reminder that when he is at his best, damn, he's a classy player. He is a seriously good player.
Do you know who he is, Guto? And this is the closest comparison I can think of, and people may agree or disagree with this. He's Leroy Fair.
Yeah.
He's Leroy Fair reincarnated in a Swans shirt here. Not Leroy Fair hasn't passed away, by the way, but in the sense of his Swans career, he's on the pitch there, and every time he's on the pitch, you want to pull your hair out because that I don't care who we're playing against, he is going to be the most talented player on the pitch in any game if he can be asked.
And they're pretty similar in terms of they're pretty similar in style as well. Both of them play the game kind of on the half turn, always.
Yeah, very dynamic, very physically. When they start going, there's not many people that can get them off the ball. He can leave a shoulder in to shield the ball, and players will bounce off them.
Yeah,
and they can move with it. They can bring through the lines. They're so similar, and seeing the attitude and the performance, I've labelled Ncham on more than one occasion this season lazy, and I've also done that many times in the past with Leroy Fair, because you just know he's got it in his locker, and sometimes he's not bothering to track. He's not bothering. It's lazy. It's sloppy in his gameplay, and it's not something he has to do. But we often thought with Leroy Fair, if he played the way we know he could play, he wouldn't be playing for Swansea City in the lower half of the Premier League. Very similar situation here with Ncham. If he could play like he did last night in his cameo and pull that out for 60 minutes a game, every game, then he wouldn't be playing at this level. No, exactly. But when he does it, it is a joy to watch.
Yeah, and he also had a part to play in the second one, which followed soon after. One thing which hasn't been spoken about in that first one is Matt Grimes' pass into Ncham in the first place, which was perfectly floated, released Ncham, who in turn released Wolf, who we've already discussed. He pulls it across the box, and Cyrus Christie is there to slam it again, just goes for power, and it goes through the keeper. I think Johnston may be a little bit disappointed with his inability to keep that one out. But, as soon as we went 2-0 up, West Brom were dead and buried. They weren't getting anything out of that game the way they played. The boos around the stadium, we couldn't hear it at the time because the sound of the away end was so loud. But when you look at it on TV and vlogs and stuff on YouTube, you can see the home fans were fuming, and they just exited the stadium. It was like a fire drill. They all went in unison. It was just, grim from their point of view. But Matt, let's talk about Cyrus Christie, because he came in January. I'll be honest, my opinion on Christie at the time was it's a decent signing, experienced championship right back, a solid, dependable figure to have in the squad. will do a decent job. I did not expect him to be as good as he has been. And we were discussing this on the way back last night, to think how disappointed we were when Laird left. People have made the comparison already, and a lot of people have said what I'm about to say already. But it is true. Cyrus Christie has been undoubtedly, by now, I think it's fair to say, a step up from Ethan Laird. Laird, I would still say, is a better dribbler, faster than Christie. But in every other aspect, both defensively and offensively, I think Christie is the better right back, and I think he's been better for us than Laird was on the whole. When you look at their performances, I don't know if I'm just overreacting because Christie scored, but again, I thought he was good against West Brom, and I think generally he's been really, really good since he joined us.
I like Cyrus Christie. I think he's come in. He's not the sort of player that we would have made when we were coming through the leagues. He's a player that's done the rounds. He's had a career. He's experienced. He wasn't someone that maybe was a rough diamond. He wasn't someone that needed. He come in. He's very much established in what he's going to offer and what he can do, and he's been a fantastic addition to the squad. With Ethan Laird, it's a very hard one to analyse retrospectively because Ethan Laird started off the season like an absolute rocket. He probably could have, and with better refereeing, should have earned us 5 or 6 penalties.
That's true.
In the first 10 games of the season alone. In terms of his attacking play, he was causing no end of problems for every team he come up against. Even the teams we back up battered against, like your Bournemouths, we could have gone 1-0 up in that game with another stonewall penalty shout. But he was one that towards the end, whether it was burnout, whether it was he's very young and perhaps not had the minutes under his belt, particularly obviously at this level, but he'd stopped trying to run at his man, and he'd stopped trying to take on his man, and just felt like for the last 6 weeks or so that he was here, he felt like he was a wasted player on the pitch because he wasn't doing any of the things that made him so exciting earlier on. And so it definitely left that sort of tainted taste where you just thought maybe he isn't all that. But look, he hasn't had a great time of it at Bournemouth since going there. Don't think he's even getting game time, is he, at the moment? So he's not, it's not, grass isn't always greener in that sense. But in Christie's come in and he's offered that very solidity I was talking about, saying that he's going to give you the dependable, he's going to give you that kind of solid performance. He's always going to be your 6.5 to 7.5 out of 10 player that's going to be able to provide in those moments. In the first half, the only highlight we had was Cyrus Christie from a tight angle, heading it towards goal. He offers that threat there. He does come in late on the back post. It's his second goal for us in quite similar circumstances as his first, and in terms of the effort. And if there's one criticism I have of Cyrus Christie's play that I've seen in his time here, it's his inability, despite being on the wing, to look across the line and stay onside. Because at the moment, he's finding himself offside 5 or 6 times a game. And look, any position, Bafétimbi Gomis used to get his absolutely destroyed on this podcast for that. But if you were looking across the full of the length of the width of the pitch to see everyone who you could possibly be flagged offside against, there's very little excuse. But that's something, hopefully, that he'll be a little less eager to step up early. And once he gets that right, the world's his oyster. And I do genuinely think that he is one that, if the numbers work, we should be looking, one of the first things we should be doing in the summer is tying him down to a proper contract with us. He's out of contract in the summer, and I'd like to see him become a Swansea City player in his own right. It would certainly help us when we're looking at the rebuilding job for next season, knowing you got someone there who you can rely upon, and I think he's that sort of man.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of which, before we move on, Kyle Norton was back for the first time in a couple of weeks yesterday after coming back from injury. I mean, how big of an addition was he to the starting 11?
He was, mate. I think Kyle Norton is one of those ones who is you'll never talk about him. I know it says hypocritical and we're going to do it, but you never talk about him when he's on the pitch. But you take him out of that team, and boy, do you know Cal Norton isn't there. And I think that epitomised last night, really. He was up, the whole defence was up against 6'6" or whatever he was, Andy Carroll. I know Andy Carroll was starved of quality service through the game, but it was important as well to know when to go to him and to stand off him, when to compete and when to let him win and try and just ruffle his feathers. Ben Cabango, I thought, did a superb job on him in that respect last night to go and meet him when he needed to, step off him when he knew he wasn't going to win the game, win the battle. And Norton is such a calming influence amongst that defence. And he like I say, I risk of repeating myself, he's the sort of player you absolutely notice when he's not there, and that's his the biggest compliment I can give him. Another who's out of contract in the summer, and despite his advancing years, I would consider offering another 12 months to him because his experience, again, he's one of those players you just want to have on your side.
Absolutely. Weird statistic that I worked out after last night's game. The Swans have won 4 away games this season. They've come on a Monday night, a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, and a Friday night. Why do the Swans hate playing away in daylight, Matt?
Why do they hate the fans that go to a Saturday game? Do you know what? That is bizarre. Daylight games seem to be our problem. I have no idea. Then I didn't know that. That's peculiar. Of course, we have had some stinkers in the night time as well. But to see that there are 4, I mean, I just thought of Stoke then as I was saying it.
That's the only stinker we've had.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking back. The only other game that we've lost away from home midweek was against Fulham. Which, makes sense. They're the best team in the division by a country mile, and I don't think the Swans played awfully in that game. But yeah, basically we've played 10 games away from home on a Saturday this season, and we've got a grand total of 3 points from those games, 3 draws. So that's an average. So that's a points per game ratio of 0.3. Contrast that with games played in midweek in the night time. We've played 7 of those, and I think we've got 13 points. So that's 1.9 point per game. So very nearly 2 points per game.
Yeah.
Which is
is this home and away, or is this just away?
This is just away. I
was going to say, because I'm thinking of the home ones as well, and obviously it'd been a mixed bag all across the board, across the season. But who are the 4 away wins?
We've won against Bristol City. That was a Friday night.
Yeah.
And then we beat Coventry, which I think was a Tuesday night, and Barnsley, which I think was a Wednesday night, and then of course last night.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, those are the 4 teams that we've beaten away from home. And we've picked up, I think, the midweek, the other point that we picked up then in midweek games was a couple of weeks back against QPR, which was a decent point. QPR challenging for promotion, even though they've had a bit of a dip recently. So yeah, I mean, midweek away performances. If you're the kind of person that can't make weekends, you've been having a great time of it. And I mean, I've only been to 3 away games this season, and I've picked them so well. Are they
the ones? Are they 3 of those 4 you've had?
Well, I've put this. I've been to 2 of them. I went to Coventry and saw us win there last night against West Brom, and I was also there when we got the 3-3 at Luton, which felt like a win because we'd come back from 3 goals down to get that point. So considering usually me going to an away game is guaranteed to result in defeat. I'm pretty chuffed with the ones that I've chosen to go to this season.
Yeah, I don't know whether looking at the psychology behind what you're saying about the midweek games, quite often, sometimes you've got a Monday night game, a Wednesday night game, a Thursday night game. These games, it's sometimes difficult to get the crowd roused. It's easier to subdue a crowd in a midweek game sometimes. I mean, a lot of them have finished work an hour or 2 earlier, have come straight over. They haven't had 4 hours solid of drinking, and got themselves in that Saturday mood, that atmosphere kind of thing. Yeah, this is the weekend. I'm going to X, Y, and Z. And I'm wondering if that perhaps plays off, because you mentioned this was an away record thing, and so I'm looking at what would affect the opposition to allow us to get those positive results. And I know from times down the Liberty, sometimes, God knows how many times I've gone down there in a midweek game and thought of the 101 other places I'd rather be than in the freezing cold in the East Stand, watching in the pissing down rain, thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? But yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, it's a really odd one, and it's an interesting statistic you picked out. Are there any more midweeks list lined up at the moment?
I don't know, actually. I'll need to have a look to see if I've seen a few people suggest that we should maybe move the South Wales Derby to a midweek.
We'll talk about that in a little bit, actually, I think, because that's an interesting one at the moment, which seems to be not here nor there. I don't know if there's anything developed in the meantime, but at the moment, are we still down for a 3 o'clock Saturday kickoff?
At the moment, yeah, but they haven't announced the TV schedule, and it's going. You'd imagine it's always on TV. It's going to be on TV.
I know this might. I'm hoping that overthinking, and there's nothing to it. But we do have Peterborough away. That is a Wednesday night game.
Yes.
So, I mean, that should be winnable any day of the week. And I don't want to jinx us, but it should be.
Yeah.
Millwall away is a Tuesday night game.
Okay.
Reading away. Yeah, Reading away is a Monday night game.
Is it? Oh.
So, this is as it stands, of course. But yeah, absolutely. There's 3 there, which, if your current trend continues, and quite interesting actually that we were before we started recording, I just mentioned the fixture list, or the run of fixtures that we do have coming up in March, April time, which there's not a game there really. You're taking Fulham out of it for next week. The games are all something you could realistically say, well, if we're at it, then we could get something out of this. And they all come in a nice little bunch. So it'd be nice to see us finish, go on from here now and pick up a run. Because one thing I thought of last night, Guto, I don't know if you agree with this, but as soon as the full time whistle went, I felt a sense of we needed that. We needed a game which wasn't smash and grab. It wasn't backs to the wall or anything like that. It was a steady performance that lasted the majority of the game. Yes, West Brom had a moment or two, but in terms of the whole game, it wasn't any part of the game where I thought, shit, we're holding on, we're not doing anything right, we're da-da-da. The first half may be boring, but in the sense of we weren't ever out of it. And it was nice to see that extended over the majority of the game. And it's important now for me that doesn't become a one-off, and now we take that into the next game and start putting performances back to back, because we need to see that, don't we? We need to see that this is something we can't just, it's not a flash in the pan and we go into show, we can build on it, we can learn from it, because there was plenty of things we did right last night.
Yeah, I thought that was the best we've played in quite a while now. And hopefully, like you said, it gives us a bit of foundation to build on. It did, of course, help. It has to be pointed out that West Brom were atrocious. And Matt, just before we move on to discuss other things, I mean, what is going on at that club? You look at that squad and you think, okay, there are some players there that have been bad purchases and who are probably overrated, but there are players there that should be doing much better than what we saw last night. And the recent results have been so appallingly bad.
Yeah.
And this is under 2 different managers. I mean, Valérien Ismaël, I thought in the summer was, he's a good coach. He did a brilliant job at Barnsley, but I thought he was a bad appointment for West Brom. Didn't think he really fitted in with that squad. And then they've made, just the most uninspiring of appointments in Steve Bruce. He's not going to be there, let's face it, for the long term, is he? I just think with a club like West Brom, it must be so demoralising to see just the way that club's been run on and off the pitch this season. It's just been such a bad season. There's no excuse for them finishing outside the top 6, in my opinion. The fact that they could very well finish in the bottom half is a joke, quite frankly. And I think somebody pointed out, if the season started around October time, then they would be 20th in the table, which doesn't bode well for them going forward. And a number of, I think one of their concerns as well is the high wage bill and the fact that a lot of their players are on contracts beyond this season as well. So, I mean, from their point of view, you can see why their fans were booing so much and why they made absolutely zero noise through the game apart from booing.
Yeah, do you know what? I've seen quite a bit on, well, not quite a bit. I've seen 4 or 5 different tweets coming back from West Brom fans from yesterday, obviously retweeted and like from Swans fans. And quite a few of them said that maybe they got it wrong with Ismaël because they thought, well, actually, at least early doors, whether they were liking it or not, he was the manager and they were getting results. And of course, that fell off a cliff, but it didn't just fall off a cliff by chance. There was obviously, they were winning ugly, and then it became the Cooper effect at Swansea, if you like, whereby the fans weren't happy with the manner of the performances, but that, unlike with Cooper, that transcended onto the pitch, and then the results stopped coming, and eventually Ismaël was replaced. And now Steve Bruce has come in, which I thought was always going to be a weird one because he had such a horrible time at Newcastle. He was never Rafa Benitez, which is apparently his biggest criticism from their point of view. And he had a horrible time there where he was just basically waiting to be put out of his misery. And you think he would want to have 12 to 18 months out of the game to lick his wounds, rethink his strategy before coming back into the game. But having spent such a long time demoralised and downbeaten and questioning himself, he's gone back almost immediately into football, into a club which is in a downward spiral and has had their own negativity for the last 6 to 8 weeks prior to his arrival. And they've come into that cauldron of expectation and demanding fans again. And I feel like he's gone there. And I can't imagine how long he was there before he thought, what have I done here? And listen, you were at the game last night, so you may not know this, but Sky were like dallying over their coverage for 20, 25 minutes after the game, waiting for Steve Bruce to give an interview, and he didn't. Before the show had ended, they couldn't get him. He has obviously spoken to the press since, but they couldn't get him for an interview last night, which speaks volumes to me, because Steve Bruce, if nothing else, I think everyone's always thought he's an absolute gentleman, and he's always done his duties and always come out.
He's going to front up. You know?
He's always been like that. He's always been, whether you like his tactics, whether you like his managerial style, you always say Steve Bruce comes across as an absolute gent and a kind-hearted man. And that's just from seeing the way his character is. And for him not to do that last night in the time frame he was required to do for Sky was a big red flag. So yes, from West Brom's point of view, the sooner this season ends, the better. I mean, they were talking all game last night about how much West Brom needed it and how much can West Brom do it. In fact, they actually introduced the result as West Brom lost to Swansea rather than Swansea beating West Brom, which is exactly the mentality that Sky had last night, that this was nothing to do with Swansea last night. This is all about, can West Brom put together a late playoff push? We're 5 points behind them now with 2 games in hand. I mean, really? I know our form has been erratic and dreadful for a long period of time, but when you consider that we're not like 12 places apart and talking about different stratospheres, theoretically we win our games in hand, we do go above them. So that is basically Sky's narrative there. It didn't really fit into the reality, but their story is one of a very, very poor season. One they haven't really got many excuses for. Whether Steve Bruce will see it into next season or whether they'll change again, I don't know. But you'd expect them to improve next time round, because this has been a real eye-opener for them and their fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And their fans are pretty miserable right now. I saw a lot of them before kick-off online kind of saying that they weren't going to bother going, that, you know, they'd lost patience and they weren't going to ruin their Monday night at the Hawthorns. And I think everybody who did go regretted that they that they didn't make the same kind of decision. Our fans, on the other hand, fantastic noise at the stadium, loads of energy, and when the goals went in, I think the kids call it limbs these days. Just absolutely
some videos.
Oh, just spectacular scenes.
No injuries, Guto?
Sorry?
No injuries from your part?
No, I was in the very back row, so nobody was kind of falling on top.
You didn't decide to swan dive all over the other fans and they
No, I didn't. I stayed on my feet, bouncing up and down, absolutely loving it. So
to be fair, on the coverage, all you could hear, and I know we talked about West Brom fans being dejected and not really up for it, but all you could hear all game were the Swansea fans. And despite what's gone on with the away performances we talked about at length, the Swans fans continue to be a credit, and that may in part explain why you had that experience prior to the kickoff yesterday with Russell Martin. I think his way of saying thank you for sticking with us and for turning up in your numbers despite what you've seen recently, and I think the fans deserve that, don't they? Because I mean, they've seen some dross this season, and they still come and they still sing and they're still the loudest wherever they go. So you know, I'm chuffed for you and for everyone who went last night that they got to see that performance, and it was over an extended period of time as well. And it was, I'm sure, the late goals are always great. To have that nice period as well, where you thought, oh, you know what, we've won this, and I'd be able to enjoy it and have limbs, as you say. It's just, I had experience. It wasn't to the extent of the comfort, as you're saying, but Bristol City, the first midweek's wins was the closest thing I can probably explain to what you probably remembering from last night, which was just, as you say, just mental celebrations and everyone enjoying themselves, which is great.
Yeah, what away day, what everything that makes an away day good. We had it last night. Also last night there was a nice moment where the fans all joined into a chant of one John Toshak. Matt, the greatest manager in this club's history, the man who led the club from Division 4 to the top flight. He is currently in hospital, according to reports, battling COVID and pneumonia. Seems to be in a pretty bad way. So I think you'll agree, Matt. We're sending him our best wishes and hoping that he can fight off this virus.
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone, everyone in the football world, he's such a giant of the football world, and even beyond that is hoping that we get some good news on that front sooner rather than later, and keep fighting strong, because everyone hopes and prays that he can fight it off, and there's plenty of life and sporting life in John Toshak yet, and we want to hear more and see more of him. And we just hoped we can hear something. We can hear something soon, which will give us some positivity about the situation.
Yeah, really hoping that Big John Toshak can get back to full health soon, and like you said, that we can get some good news soon, hopefully. But until then, our best wishes go out to John and his family, and hopefully, like you said, we'll hear about the recovery soon. But let's move on now to discuss the upcoming game. We've talked about the positives from West Brom. Hopefully, Matt, that'll put the players in a confident mood and get them in the right frame of mind as they prepare to face Coventry at the Liberty Stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, and we are a different kettle of fish at home, aren't we? We're very much a different sort of team now. Not saying that in terms of performances necessarily. I feel like, the second half of Bristol City was far and away a much better performance than the first. I mean, the first half we did have fans booing the players leaving the pitch, and it sporadically, and it was that contrast between the first and the second half can't be understated, really. We had the disappointment of Luton, but we had last two at home, or 3 and 4 if you include before the Luton game. So at home we seem to be more capable of getting the results, irrespective of how the performance in general goes. So Coventry is one of those games where you're looking at and you're thinking, yes, they're above us in the table, but Coventry at home is very much a winnable. Is very much a winnable game from Swans' point of view, and they will much prefer to play the Swansea City. Obviously, before last night, they'd rather play it at their stadium than at ours, because we do seem to be able to just dig it out in front of our own fans, and hopefully that we'll see a performance as well that can build on the one we saw last night. Because what have we really speaking? What have we got to play for this season? Barring an absolute miracle, this season's dead. So what we're looking at now is putting stuff in place so we can build upon. And performance like last night, a professional performance like last night, where we got it tactically spot on, is the sort of thing you need to take going forward and say, right, okay, now we need to work out how we're going to play against Coventry, how we're going to make them worry about us, and give us those options looking ahead now to say, right, this is essentially a 14-game audition for next season. And why not? Because ultimately, like I say, very little left on the campaign for us, so we can really give this a run-up now, the 22-23 season, go into it, and give this now with pressure off us to say, this is how we want to be and this is how we want to play. And hopefully we'll be able to be a little bit more expressive in our play and be a little bit smarter in our play, shall I say.
I think Coventry will be a good game in that sense, because we saw when we met them first game of the season away at the it's not called the Rico Arena anymore. I can't remember what it's called. It's some kind of sponsorship deal. But it was a great game, really open, really well contested. But there were chances aplenty, and that's because Coventry, I think, play the same way the whole time. They play a very attacking style. They're reasonably open. I don't think they're a team that's really particularly suited to shutting up shop and trying to frustrate the opposition. I think they're a team that tries to go toe-to-toe to the opposition, which means it's an entertaining game, but also they're going to leave space. And I think a lot of the time when teams come to the Liberty, the times we struggle against them is when they sit back and they try to frustrate us and they just park the bus and catch us out then on the break. And that's when we really struggle to break teams down, when teams do that. And I don't really see Coventry doing that. I think they're going to come to the Liberty and they're going to try and create chances. They're going to try and play a passing game, an open game, fast-paced, and that should leave space for both teams. So while it'll give our defenders more to do probably, hopefully it'll leave a bit more space in midfield, a bit more space out wide for us to try and create something as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the mentality is key there. That we need to be looking to take the game to Coventry and to look to exploit those spaces they may leave. And quite often I've been a critic of our pedestrian style. I mentioned when I was talking about comparing last night's game, particularly in the second half, to games we'd seen recently, where we do take a second or third touch. And when the inevitable defender comes across and closes up your Pattersons, your Pirots, your Obafemis, then we go, right, okay, well, that's no longer on, so I'll pass it sideways. So when those sorts of situations happen, and it's infuriating, I'm hoping that we see a little bit more bravery in our play and a little bit more confidence to try that pass and try that ball forward. And I think that leads from the bench. That comes from the manager. I know he can, kick up a storm about the players not playing the way he hopes to, but the selection for me is key. I think he needs to be showing his cards to the players and to the fans, and saying, look, we're gonna go at these and we're gonna try and entertain and win the game. I'm a big fan of playing Obafemi and Pirot together, or Pirot just off Obafemi. The intelligence of Pirot is to arrive late in the box or to drift off his man to find a pocket of space is unrivaled. I think he knows exactly where to be and when to be there. And his finishing is Michu-esque. And in terms of when he gets in those positions, you have no doubt of how he's going to where the ball's going to end up. But it's hard for him to do that when he's the lone front man, because it means then he is relying on Patterson to be close up to him, because the defender can easily not mark him out of the game, and you see him quite isolated, and he's never been a player to dominate the game, but you need him to be in those pockets of space, hidden from defenders when the opportunity does arise. And Obafemi, in particularly for Perot's goal last night, we can talk about Perot drifting off, whatever, but Obafemi makes a dart towards the goal line. So when the ball is pulled back by Ncham, the defenders are occupying themselves with Obafemi. Perot's in that pocket of space. And I think I like that. I like that attacking intent there of having them both up there. They've got more issues to worry about. Patterson as well. Whether he's at the sort of level and form that he was at earlier in the season, it's up for debate. But his presence alone is a goal and assist threat for the opposition, something they need to consider, something they need to worry about. I'd keep leaving Cham on the bench. I think he's an impact sub. I don't think he's one we can start, because he doesn't give us the energy. It's pointless him giving us his 20-minute burst when everyone's fit and fresh. I think we're better bringing him off the bench when the opposition are tiring, where he can have an impact like he did last night. And yeah, again, some may disagree. Hannes Wolf, I much prefer him taking that wing-back role than Latabaudiere. If he's fit, I know he took a couple of kicks and knocks last night, so I'm hoping that he's not come off too worse for wear for that. But that sort of player as well, because even though he's playing in that wing-back role, his instinct is to get forward and to support the front man. And you mentioned earlier on, Guto, about his link-up play with Patterson. And his one-touch passing, his flicks inside, his movement, got in the box a few times and created a bit of trouble. I know we struggled to create that final opportunity in the first half, but there was a lot of good movement, a lot of good passing there. And I think in him, he's an asset to have on the pitch, because when we get forward, he is a very creative player and he gives us another dimension. So if we approach it the right way in our selection, then I'm sure that will pass off to the players, and not only that, but to the fans as well, who will know that this is a team that's come out to attack, and we can hopefully see a performance that will make us realise that we can put a couple together back to back. And like I say, we've got a run of games that we can win. It's important you go into those games in a good vein of form, because you can all of a sudden find yourself picking up 7 from 9, etc. And you're looking at it then, you're thinking, we're on a bit of a run here now, and the next game is winnable, the next game is potentially winnable. And you want to get on those sorts of runs. It breeds confidence, it breeds good positivity atmosphere. You get me on a podcast talking happy things, which is a rarity. All those things, really. But I hope Russell Martin sticks with his positive selection.
Yeah, I really hope so too. And, there's evidence that we can get a reward for it. Coventry are on a decent run at the moment. They've only lost one of their last 6 games. That was against Cardiff. I actually watched that game, but I thought Coventry were quite poor in that game, I'll be honest. I don't think they were great. But they've also, they've only kept 1 clean sheet, though, in the last 7. So they do let in goals, which is the point that we've been making. There is room for goals in this game. They're also going to be without Darbo, their right back, who received a red card in the game against Preston last week. So he'll be suspended. But one player who is likely to play, Matt, is Jake Bidwell. Now, there was... it felt when he left as though there was more. I think there was more appreciation for Jake Bidwell when he left the Swans than there had been at any point during his entire stay here, because he was a much maligned player for a long time. And then all of a sudden, he left and people were acting like he was the kind of missing link. And I do sympathise with that, because I questioned slightly the wisdom of letting him go. I thought we could have done with the numbers, but I guess another chance to look back and ask, the
legacy of Bidwell.
Well, yeah, and do you think we have missed Jake Bidwell since he went to Coventry?
I don't think anyone can say that we haven't. And even if you're just looking at purely, that's made up a word there, purely from a numbers point of view, how we've struggled in that position since he's left.
Yeah.
It's been one of the biggest, most damning criticisms of Swansea City SC this season is letting him go and not having his replacement lined up. I know we've got Ogbeta, who's going to come in, and if he gets fit, I know she's struggling with that side of things at the moment. But we played Manning out there, we played Latabaudiere out there, we've got Hannes Wolf out there, and we were working on a one out, one in philosophy at the club. We had to get rid of players, which we all bought into and accepted in the January transfer window. And Jake Bidwell, in a position where we weren't particularly blessed with numbers anyway, to let him go, expected him to be one of the higher ended earners in the club, and he was out of contract in the summer anyway. But to not replace him and to do in the 11th hour then, a deadline day, felt a bit like we just completely lost our minds. So yes, we are still paying the price of letting Jake Bidwell go. That's not to say that I thought he was the second coming of the Messiah. He was very good at what he did. He was just very much more a Steve Cooper player than a Russell Martin player for me. I don't think he was mobile enough to play the sort of football that Martin wanted to play. But you get the ball to him. He came to me he looked to me like a left back David Beckham, in a sense of he was never going to skin 2 or 3 men down the line like an Ethan Laird and then try and get into the box. But if you put the ball in on his foot on the edge of the box, he's going to whip in one of the best crosses in the division, because he had a great cross on him. But to get him into that position, you needed to work it around and allow him to get himself up the pitch, and then you could give it to him, and then he could whip in the ball. But I don't think he would have worked. I don't think he was ever really in line for a new contract, particularly if money situation wouldn't have allowed it. But he was solid. Look, him and Connor Roberts last season racked up goals and assists, and were, for large parts of the season, our biggest threats. So, yeah, it would, I wasn't his biggest fan, but at the same time, you have to respect the art of what he was doing. Just because it wasn't Russell Martin's style of play, that doesn't mean that he won't fit in well elsewhere. I'm surprised he didn't end up at a Middlesbrough, that sort of club where I thought he was going to go a little while earlier. But yeah, I'm sure I wish him well, apart from on the weekend. But we also have the benefit of knowing exactly what he is good at, and so that is something that we need to know ahead of the game. Don't let him get crosses in, because if he does, he's going to be able to put him in an area which can hurt you.
And that was something we did reasonably well last night. I thought blocked off the crosses into the box. Yeah, it's likely he's going to play. I think he's only missed 1 game since he moved, so he's definitely, unlike Ethan Laird, nailed down a spot in Coventry's starting lineup. So it seems he will be coming back. The question is, will he be celebrating a win, or will he be down in the dumps as he returns to his new home? Prediction, Matt, what do you think? Are we going to follow up the win against West Brom with another double, this time against the Sky Blues?
I hope so. And I think the reason I'm confident or positive and optimistic is because I think that comments emanating from the club since Sheffield United have suggested a slight change in tact and maybe wising up a little bit ahead of time, and not just being stubborn to the extent of we're going to do this and do this and do this some more, and maybe just being a little bit more like, actually, we need to make sure that we aren't just every player everywhere. We need to be a little bit more disciplined in how we do things, because otherwise, as attractive as you want it to be, if you're 2 or 3-0 down within 20 minutes, you're never going to win a game of football. So last night, I thought we saw that sort of professionalism, that sort of the naivety went out of our game a little bit last night, which I was pleased to see. And I'm hoping that's proves to be a little bit of a turning point in the second half of our season, where we may just be now a little bit more aware of what we're doing, and not just we've won the ball, so all of a sudden 4 of our defenders need to sprint up the pitch as quickly as possible and leave one poor bugger at the back on his own. But yeah, we just have a little bit more professionalism, a little bit more intent in how we're going to manage a game. And if we take that going forward, along with showing a little bit more bravery in the opposition half, then there's no reason to think we can't get a result. And I'm going to opt for a 1-0 home win for this one.
I'm feeling super positive after what we saw at the Hawthorn, so I'm going to follow suit and I'm going to go for a win, but I'll go for a 2-1 win for the Swans. But hopefully we can keep it up now that we've got the wind in our sails. I will just very quickly look ahead to our next game, which will be on next Tuesday against the league leaders and pretty much champions-elect, I think, in most people's eyes, Fulham. Put simply, Matt, I don't think anybody looks forward to playing Fulham these days, do they? I mean, they are just a runaway train in this division, and they have got by far and away the best squad in this division. And they are just winning pretty much flat out at the moment. So how are we going to beat them?
Well, that's a question. We need to stop the supply to Mitrovic, simply put. The man's already broken championship records and we've still got a third of the season to go. It's obscene. And he will do at this level, but he's got the squad around him to give him the ball and supply him. And they've got the threats on the wings that can make sure the ball gets to him. And you've got so many players to worry about. They're going to break the 100-goal barrier this season. The goal difference is ridiculous. It's plus 53 is obscene. But looking at the way they play and the way they just blow teams away, the only chance you've got against a Fulham team is to starve Mitrovic of the ball. And they've had a physical forward to deal with last night, and they did an exceptional job on not just him, but his supply lines. It's a different kettle of fish when you're talking about West Brom to Fulham. You're talking about a team full of confidence or a team completely stripped of it. But that said, the principles are the same. You need to make sure you don't overcommit to the wingers. You can't let them skip around you because with the pace they've got, they will. So you need to give them a yard or two to step off, but you also need to make sure they can't then deliver the ball into the box. So it's about timing it. It's about making sure that you don't overcommit and allow themselves a free run in on goal. It's about being clear. You need a slice of luck as well, let's be honest. A big slice of luck if you're going to get a result. And hopefully they have an off day and a perfect storm can happen and you can get it. But first and foremost, there's no question in my mind, we're not going to outscore Fulham in a contest of attacking teams because we struggle getting the goals. Fulham don't. So let's not try and beat them at that, but let's try and keep them at bay and allow ourselves that sniff, that opportunity with your Perot, Bafemi, Pattersons, just to catch them out and just to create something up the pitch. I'd expect us to play with a little bit of commentary result will dictate a lot of this, but playing with the confidence of recent results if we do manage to pick up a positive one, but at the same time be very wary. You don't want to come off two good results and then get a 5-0 pounding at home because that won't do anyone any good. So we keep them quiet. And I do think realistically the best chance we've got of this is a draw, but I've been wrong almost every prediction I've made this season. So what's another one for me?
I mean, Fulham haven't been as rampant as they were a couple of weeks back. I mean, start of January, they were winning 7-0, 6-2, 6-2. I mean, they were just scoring flat out. Just embarrassing teams, week in, week out. It's they've slowed down a little bit. I mean, against Cardiff, it was only 1-0. Just one Mitrovic goal. The difference between the two teams, but
just one.
Just the one. But let's face it, they're an amazing team when you look at the attacking talent that they've got on that side. I mean, they already had the likes of Mitrovic, Cabano, Carvalho, who looks an absolutely phenomenal young player who's already he's going to Liverpool at the end of the season. He just looks like a star in the making. You can see why Liverpool want him. Who else have they got? I mean, they obviously Harry Wilson, who is having a great season with them. And then in the January transfer window, they go out and get Nico Williams on loan, who, in my opinion, has no right to be in the Championship with his quality. I think he should have been on loan at a relegation battling Premier League team. Personally, I think that would have been more useful for his
Swansea City.
Yeah, or Swansea City, obviously. But I mean, I think that would have been better for his development from a Welsh point of view, just because I think he's going to find Fulham far too easy. It's, Fulham winning week in, week out, dominating games, creating tons of chances. They didn't need Nico Williams. They were already going up without Nico Williams. I think Nico would have probably benefited a bit more from a higher standard of opposition and perhaps a bit more adversity down towards the bottom of the Premier League. But there we go. Bottom line is they've got a Premier League quality fullback whipping in crosses for a player in Mitrovic who is clearly, whatever anybody says about his suitability for the Premier League, he's clearly far too good for the Championship. His goal scoring record is insane at this level. He is the best striker that I've ever seen at this level. There are various reasons why it hasn't worked out for him at the Premier League level, but it's a cheat code. It's a guaranteed promotion when you've got him in the Championship. So, I mean, let's face it, this is one, nobody goes into Fulham expecting anything. You go in there hoping that you're going to be able to frustrate them in some way, that you're going to catch them on an off day. And it does happen. A couple of games ago, they lost 2-1 at home against Huddersfield. Nobody was expecting that. Not too long ago, they got a draw against Blackpool, and Blackpool played really well against them. They have lost games this season. They have had games where it hasn't quite functioned. Apparently, that was the case against Cardiff. They weren't at their usual best, but they found a way of winning the game. We've got to hope that they're in one of those moods where it's not quite clicking. They don't really have the energy that they usually would. And if that's the case, then who knows? Perhaps we can sense that we can get something out of the game. But like you said, I think it's first and foremost about trying to keep things disciplined, keep things tight, limit the mistakes, not play into their hands. Because I think it's fair to say when we were at Craven Cottage earlier on in the season, we didn't play too badly, but we gave them far too much space, far too much freedom to attack. And, Mitrovic punished us ruthlessly with 3 very well taken goals. So I think it's I think for us to have any kind of chance, the defense has got to have probably its best game of the season. But yeah, this is definitely one that you go into hoping for a shock rather than expecting anything. So with that in mind, Matt, give me a prediction. Is there any hope here?
I think it's one of those ones you hope to see performance and a good attitude on the players. You don't want to see heads dropping. You still want to see players tracking the men. You want to see them doing the utmost, even if Fulham are man to man, just better all over the pitch. You just want to see that everyone's pulling in the same direction. It's certainly one of those ones you take a lot more heart from the performance from, even if the result isn't exactly as you'd hoped. But again, I think Coventry plays a little bit into it for me. But if we do get a good result against Coventry, I can see us having enough confidence in the Fulham game to really limit them. But as far as that concerned, I can't see us doing quite enough. I'll go for a 2-1 away win for that one.
We haven't had any of the kind of thrashings at home that we've had away from home. I mean, at home,
the only one was Stoke, wasn't it? I think.
The 3-1 right at the start of the season when things were still gelling and Russell Martin had only just arrived. But since then, I mean, I don't know if we've lost by more than 1 goal at home. Can't imagine we have. So. But I do have a horrible feeling that this may be the one.
We did get pumped by Forest. I cannot remember that one.
Yes, we did.
I had repressed it, but thanks for bringing it back to my forefront of my memory because I had repressed that one successfully.
Man, I'm sorry for bringing that up. I am sorry. Yes, we have been pumped at home. We have been absolutely smashed at home. Okay. I think this could be one of those games where if Fulham get 1 goal, we'll try and roll the dice and overextend ourselves and leave ourselves open. And I can see it turning a bit nasty. So I'll go for a 3-0 win to Fulham, and just one of those nights where you just say, yeah, there was nothing we could do really. But if we do lose to Fulham, I don't think there's any shame in it because I think they're a Premier League team in waiting.
Yeah, and do you know what? I don't think anyone is going to blink if they see Swansea City 0, Fulham 3. You don't want to turn in 5 and 6 because that is where people go, here we go. But, 2 or 3-0 to Fulham at this season has become the norm. You're an anomaly if you haven't lost 3-0 to Fulham. I know we already have earlier in the season. But in terms of how we have played, I think taking the performances aside, I think if we were to get the result you've predicted, 3-0, but the performance was a generally positive one and a competitive one, even if they were just better than us, I don't think too many people will, grumble or throw the toys out of the pram over that one. I wouldn't be too disheartened, if I'm honest, which is a bizarre thing to say, a 3-0 home reverse, but it just goes to speak volumes of just how far ahead Fulham is from the rest of the division.
Yeah, it's a bit of a joke, really, isn't it? But there we go. We've got 2 home games to look forward to, and hopefully you can join us next time when we will be looking back at those games and analysing what the Swans did well, hopefully repeating some of the traits that we saw at West Brom, and hopefully picking up a few more points to go with the 3 points that we got on Monday night. But until next time, thank you very much for listening.